Public systems management concept, nature, scope, and characteristics. Learning outcomes, introduction, public systems management concept, public systems management nature, public systems management scope, public system management characteristics. So, analyze the theoretical foundations of the evolution of the concept of public systems management, examine the nature and scope of public systems management, and highlight the characteristics of public systems management. Public administration, both as a practice and as a discipline, is undergoing change in view of contemporary global developments in the socio-economic arena. The current globalization trends have led to the rethinking about the role of the state and government. Approaches to the public administration are also embedded in wider conceptions of the state, the relationship between state, market, and civil society. The market model of governance has been emerging since 1980s. Public administrators are now viewed by many as entrepreneurial managers whose job is to attain cost effectiveness. They are expected to be more entrepreneurial and result focused. In this context, the concept of public systems has added a new dimension to the structure and system of working of the public administration. Public systems management is a developing theme, lending a new dimension to the discipline of public administration. This unit may an attempt is made to explore the evolution, nature, scope, and characteristics of public systems management (PSM). Public systems then remarkable changes have taken place in the 80s and 90s as the governments in the Western developed countries sought to adapt themselves to new technology, new societal demands, and keen competition, led to a search for a new kind of organization in public administration, permeating all its systems and subsystems. Rigid, rule-bound, and hierarchic public administration does not suit the needs of a dynamic situation demanding speedy action. In this perspective, many of the flexible organizational designs and practices pioneered by the private sector have been introduced in the public system with suitable modifications. Public systems management today is thus being refashioned to underemphasize the traditional Weberian rule boundedness, and the focus is now more on results and cost effectiveness. PSM considers citizens as active consumers and adopts collaborative approach to work public, private, and civil society organization in solving community problems and providing public services. In fine, PSM seeks to make public service delivery efficient, effective, and economical with the adoption of many of the management concepts and techniques of the private sector. Key concepts: civil society, it refers to self-organization of citizens. It is the collective of social organizations which enjoy autonomy from the state and pursue special interests. Civil society includes network of groups that include financial, private charitable, social service, development, and professional organizations. Debureaucratization, it implies reducing the bureaucratisms prevalent in organizations. It is done through removal of reducing the exercise of power and authority from a few bureaucrats or politicians in government. This is also achieved through promotion of lessening the monopolies of a few in any sector of the economy, opening those sectors to the other players also. The reforms ushered in India since 1980s has thrown open certain sectors of the economy, such as banking, telecommunications, civil aviation, etc., to competition to provide better service at lower prices and greater choice. So these sectors have been given more autonomy, free from stringent rules and regulations. Neoliberalism. This thinking gained prominence from mid 1950s in Britain, which advocated free market. It gave significance to supremacy of market mechanisms, maximization of individual liberty and freedom, rollback of state. It propagated diminishing the role of welfare state as it was said to affect the potential of free market. Property rights theory, it offers a way of understanding the way incentives for performance function in private sector. According to this, in an organization, owners do not have complete control of their assets, as employees, creditors, etc., also contribute to the firm's functioning. They also have certain rights, especially a certain amount of revenue from the company's assets. Hence, managers, employees have a share in the profits of the company or enterprises in the form of bonus, increase in pay, etc. Hence, incentives play a key role in enhancing the performance of company. Next, distinctiveness of public systems management. Traditional public administration model, changing nature of public service, bureaucratic system, and public systems management distinction. um, Comprehend the basic principles of traditional public administration model and its limitations, examine the changing nature of public service, highlight the differences between bureaucratic system and public systems management, appreciate the importance of public systems management. So, in the discipline of public administration, the issue of governance has emerged as one of the key areas of discussion in recent times. This reforming administrative institutions, specifically bureaucracy, and enhancing the role of non-government organizations in the delivery of public services. The World Development Report 1999-2000 also advocated the ideology of pragmatism and the complementary roles of government, market, and civil society in development. As a result, public services are being managed rather than administered. Administration lays emphasis more on internal structural dynamics and rules and regulations that on the achievement of results, which is considered most important in management. In practice, the roles of functions of management differ from administration. The new system of public service management is result focused. The transition from the old to the new providing services has altered the role of the government, emphasizing collaboration and enablement rather than the hierarchy and control. The new system is referred to variously as new governance, third party government, government by proxy, and indirect government. Public systems management, hence it's acquiring a distinctive character. In this unit, an attempt has been made to discuss the reactions to traditional public administration model and emphasize the distinctiveness of public systems management, superseding the traditional bureaucratic model. Traditional public administration, which was based on Bavarian bureaucracy, emphasizing on structure, work division, centralization of public affairs in the context of rapid socio-economic and technical changes, and of course, the globalization trend. As a result, new public management approach has emerged as an alternative to traditional public administration to ensure effective, efficient, and citizen customer-friendly provision of public services. This approach adopts managerialism and public-private collaborative approach to management. It is operationalized through the adoption and strengthening of public systems management. PSM, oriented towards result-oriented and quality consciousness, has inducted entrepreneurial and user-oriented culture in the management of public systems. At the same time, it needs cautioning that public systems management has its own intrinsic logic and values, and hence does not be wholly sold out to private sector principles and practices. Key concepts: disinvestment. It implies offering a part of quite held by the government in public sector enterprises to mutual funds, financial institutions, and employees. The new industrial policy resolution of 1999 in India introduced disinvestment with a view to improving the performance of public sector enterprises. Disinvestment is set to broad base the equity, improve managerial performance, and enhance the availability of resources for public sector enterprises and yield resources for exchequer. It attempts to bring about a change in the transfer of ownership of public sector enterprises. Food security. It is considered as a situation where people have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. So liberalization, it is a policy of promoting competition, limiting the role of government to enable market economy function efficiently. It encompasses several measures, including deregulation, privatization, the various policy measures introduced in India since 19. Public systems management, constitutional context, learning outcomes, introduction, constitutional environment of election commission, Union Public Service Commission, Attorney General of India, National Commission for Scheduled Castes, National Commission for Scheduled Tribes, the Official Language Commission, Commission for Linguistic Minorities, Administrative Tribunals, the Civil Society, other important commissions, National Commission for Women, National Commission for Backward Classes, National Human Rights Commission, and State Human Rights Commissions. Learning outcomes, appreciate the importance of contextual relevance of public systems management, explain the constitutional environment of public systems management in India, discuss the different authorities and commissions created under the Indian Constitution that are played an important role in public systems management. Introduction. See, public administration, as Fredericks so forcefully argued, is influenced by its environment. Every system operates in a given environment and has a contextual setting in accordance with which different policy issues and problems at hand are translated into action and implemented and evaluated. The nature of state, the type of polity, the role of various governmental and non-governmental agencies and actors, culture, ethics, and values, etc., have an important bearing of the on the functioning and performance of public systems. In other words, all these variables and forces are components of the contextual setup of the public systems management. Social, economic, political, technological, and constitutional factors are features of a contextual setup within which public systems operate. Policies are formulated and implemented taking cognizance of these factors. Therefore, public systems management cannot ignore these contextual factors and forces. Um, See, the constitutional, political, socio-economic, and technological factors that have been influencing the management of public systems. So, the focus of discussion of the present unit is confined to analyze the constitutional environment of public systems management in India. The constitutional environment of constitutionalism is one of the most important landmarks in the governance of post-independence India. The liberal democratic constitution of India, as a basic law of the land, has made specific provisions to secure for the citizens of the country social, political, and economic justice, liberty, equality, dignity of individuals, and to ensure unity and integrity of the nation. To achieve these constitutional objectives, the constitution itself has created some important authorities and commissions. The constitutional provisions and the authorities and commissions determine the scope and activities of the public systems, and public systems management in India has to operate within the constitutional framework and on the basis of principles enshrined in the constitution. Consolidated Fund of India. It is the fund which consists of all revenues received by the government, loans raised by it, and receipts from the recoveries of loan granted by it. All government expenditures is incurred from the consolidated fund, and no amount can be withdrawn from the fund without authorization from the parliament. Contingency fund. The contingency fund is utilized to meet urgent unforeseen expenditure pending authorization from the parliament. Any expenditure incurred from the fund when the parliament is not in scene is obtained subsequently, and the amount spent from the fund is recouped. Judicial review. Judicial review implies the power of judiciary, that is courts, to examine the legality and constitutionality of administrative acts, of officials executive orders, and legislative enactments. It is method of exercising judicial control. Judicial review is subject to constitutional provisions and respective acts that deal with administrative decisions in particular matters. Public account. It comprises money from other transactions of the government, such as provident fund, small savings collection, other deposits, etc. Westminster model. This model is generally identified with the British form of government. Its key characteristics include parliamentary sovereignty, accountability through free and fair elections, strong cabinet government, collective responsibility, central government dominance, ministerial responsibility, and neutral civil services. Next is public systems management, political context. See, public systems management, political context. Learning outcome, political environment, rollback of the state, role of regulatory state, rise of new managerialism and competitive environment, citizens' right. After studying this unit, you should be able to comprehend the dynamic nature of political environment of public systems management in India, highlight the emerging ideas about the rollback of the state, and explain the role of the regulatory state, and discuss the impact of managerial reforms that are undertaken to enhance the efficiency of public systems management. The public systems management of a country is embedded in its prevailing social, cultural, economic, and political situation. It is essential in this context to understand also the dynamic nature and role of the state functioning within the framework of the constitution with the help of vital apparatus of governance. This unit may an attempt is made to discuss public systems management in the context of prevailing political environment with special reference to India. Conclusion. See, public systems and political environment are closely related with and both influence each other. India has a liberal democratic political system, the system of governance in which the executive is responsible to the legislature. Federalism is another feature of Indian political system. Coalition or minority politics accompanied by multi-party system, owing to the plurality of Indian society and regional diversities, has come to stay in the political governance of India. India's political system has undergone tremendous changes since the 1980s in response to changing circumstances like globalization, liberalization, and privatization. Public systems management should understand the dynamics of the political system and enhance its capacity to cope with the forces of globalization and international competition. At the same time, its ultimate responsibility to live up to people's expectations and needs in a democracy needs to be always kept in mind. Key concepts: Prevention of Terrorism Ordinance (POTO). This ordinance was promulgated in 2001. It makes provisions for prevention of and dealing with terrorism, structural and adjustment and stabilization policy (SA and SP). During 1980s and 1990s, the need was felt for bringing about structural changes in many countries to enable market forces play a key role. This comprises the reform measures promoted by IMF and World Bank, US Congress, etc., which aims to address the economic crisis, especially by the Latin America countries. This is a strategy intended to stabilize the economy through some structural measures in trade, financial areas, through privatization and deregulation of domestic markets. The reforms aimed at correcting imbalance in the balance of payments, government budgets, money supply, letting markets work, etc. User charges. These are the charges imposed for providing services or sale of products in connection with government activities. These are paid by citizens for assumptions of goods and services and do not include fees for capital costs. User fees are charged to improve resources allocation in public sectors in some countries. Now, public systems management, socio-economic context. Social context, economic context, changing nature of state and economy. Um, See, explain the various social factors that determine the environment of public systems, know the economic environment of public systems management, and appreciate the changing nature of state and economy in India. A comprehensive understanding of the socio-economic context of a country is necessary to understand the functioning of its public systems. Latter are embedded in the country's socio-cultural economic subsystems for creation of an effective public systems management and to maintain its operational efficiency. One must know the socio-cultural and economic environment in which the public systems exist. So far as India's public management system is concerned, it is this necessary to carefully analyze the country's socio-economic factors that set the background and profoundly influence the structure and operation of the management system. An attempt is made in this unit to identify and analyze the critical socio-economic factors that vitally affect the organization and working of public systems management in India. Uh, close uh, A close relationship exists between the public systems management and the environment within which it operates. Public systems behavior is influenced by the values cherished by the society. The socio-economic conditions not only influence the functioning of public systems but also give a new shape to their structure and system of working. The structural and behavioral patterns of public systems, the methods of recruitment and retention of employees, the reward system, the financial capabilities and management practices, accountability to the public, and overall ethics and philosophy of public systems are all under close scrutiny today. It is widely acknowledged that the public systems are in need of restructuring and reorienting in tune with the changing socio-economic scenario of the country and its globalized location. So, basic traditional norms and values of the public system, such as neutrality, impartiality, accountability, responsiveness, and quality, are undergoing change, and there is a growing realization today that newer values such as competitiveness, efficiency, quality, productivity, and profitability in the functioning of public systems need to be inducted in to enhance the coping ability of the public systems in an increasingly complex era on both domestic and international fronts. Key concepts: gross national product, it is a measure of country's economic performance. It is calculated by adding to the gross domestic product the income earned by the residents from investments abroad, less the corresponding income sent home by foreigners who are living in the country. Transparency, this implies doing away with secrecy with regard to decision making and making easy access of information to people relating to government activities, expect those relating to matters of national security defense. Next is new technologies and public systems management. Information and communication technology and in good governance, network society, role of new technologies in public systems management, electronic governance, digital governance, role of information and communication technology in public policy, role of information and communication technology in public service delivery, information and communication technology initiative case studies, Sachivalaya Vahini, e-judiciary, e-panchayat, Malaysian e-government project, problems in application of new technologies, conclusion, learning outcomes. After reading this unit, you should be able to appreciate the importance of information and communication technology (ICT) in the context of good governance, understand the concept of network society, explain the role of new technologies in public systems management, highlight the role of ICT in public policy and public service delivery, examine a few case studies to know the application of ICT enabled initiatives and their impact on public systems management, and identify the problems in application of new technologies. The 21st century is regarded as the information era. Information has the potential to influence every aspect of our lives at the individual as well as societal levels. In the present competitive environment, information is being treated as the most important resource. Information facilitates sharing, exchanging, retaining, as well as properly managing the knowledge output. It is the lifeblood of public governance. Information and communication technology (ICTs) are being seen as having the potential to contribute towards sustainable growth in all countries. The major objectives of ICT are to bring efficiency, responsiveness, openness, and participation in public governance. The focus of this unit is to discuss the role of new technologies and their impact on public systems management. See, modern societies are network societies. The concept of network is central to process of globalization. Among the many developments and challenges facing governments today, perhaps the most important is the challenge that arises from the increasing influence of ICT. The major objectives of ICT initiatives are to bring efficiency in responsiveness, openness, participation in governance. Various manifestations of ICT initiatives are revolutionizing the governance process. They are playing an important role in public policy and public delivery systems to provide citizen-friendly administration. A developing society like India has been facing a number of problems in the field of application of ICT, and the politico-administrative atmosphere is also not quite conducive to promotion of ICT initiatives. India may the success of new technological initiatives would to a great extent depends on when and how the governments at different levels decide to address the requirements of the downtrodden and the marginalized sections of the populations who constitute a large portion of India's population. At the same time, it is being realized that the ICT revolution has become an imperative necessity for effective management of public systems. Key concepts: development of women and children in rural areas programs, PWCRA. This was launched in India in 1982 as a part of Integral Rural Development Program. Its aim are to empower rural women living below the poverty line (BPL) by way of organizing them to create sustainable income generating activities through self employment. It aims at economic and social development with focus on health, education, sanitation, etc. Emphasizes on group activity, encouraging regular savings and income generating schemes. Digital governance. It refers to governance process in which information and communication technology (ICT) plays a significant role. It ensures active participation of citizens in decision making processes and their accessing public services. Digital governance uses ICT to bring about changes in the delivery of and standards of public services and the ways of interaction and participation of citizens in governance. So, General Pocket Radio Services (GPRS). It is a new non-voice value-added service that allows the information to be sent and received across a mobile telephone network. It facilitates instant connection, whereby information can be sent or received immediately as the need arises. Subject to radio coverage, information society. It is a society in which low-cost information and ICT are in general use. It emphasizes on investment in human and social capital and considers knowledge and creativity as the key factors. Knowledge society. It is a society in which people have open and timely access to information and knowledge. This is utilized for informed decision making and transformation to quality life. Strategic planning. Strategic planning is long-term planning of the organization. It involves a clear statement of organization's mission, strategic goals and objectives which are key to the organization, identifying the different stakeholders and developing strategies to achieve them. Wireless Application Protocol (WAP). It is a facility that allows users to access information instantly through wireless devices such as mobile phones, pagers, etc. Next is concept of governance and introduction. learning outcomes, introduction, concept of governance, interpretation of international organization, governance, contextual users, forms of governance, models of governance, concepts of governance, and appraisal, conclusion. Learning outcomes. After going through this unit, you should be able to explain the concept of governance, examine its contextual uses and forms, highlight the models of governance, and make an appraisal of the concept of governance. Governance has become a prominent area of discussion in present time. Governance has now not only occupies central stage in the development discourse, but it is also considered as the crucial element to be incorporated in the development strategy. Governance is the social theoretical construct separate from the theory of state, is not only in the inchoate state, but its formulation also differs among scholars depending upon ideological convictions. Public administration as a major constituent of state has always been an instrument to accomplish welfare goals and objectives. Over the past 2 decades, the impact of globalization, rises of market forces, increase in expectations of citizens have widened the process of governing. Instead of government being the sole agency to discharge the tasks of governance, need for participative and consultative modes of governing has become strong. This, along with gradual blurring of distinctions between public and private sectors, has given rise to the concepts of governance and over time gained a wider connotation. We shall attempt to examine the concept of governance, its contextual uses, forms, and models in this unit. See, governance basically focuses on the process of governing involving interactions between various formal and informal institutions as well as influencing the policies and decisions that concern public lives. The success of governance depends on the reinvention of the government, re, reinvigoration of non-government sectors with a social motive. There is a need to have a political will, normative concerns, and organizational flexibility. Besides, it is imperative to pay attention to the mechanisms and modalities followed by governments to determine public policies, and equally important to critically examine whether the policies are being efficiently and honestly implemented by the government agencies and organizations responsible for performing the assigned tasks. So it also needs to be seen whether and to what extent the governments have established meaningful linkages with various elements of civil society, which can support the concern for good governance. See, governance needs to be transformed to make it the key instruments towards effective implementation of public policies. This requires a multi-pronged strategy to strengthen the capacity of all the actors involved in the governance process. Governance as sustainable human development needs to be given a wider connotation so as to bring within its fold not just good government but also other formal and informal institutions, public private interface, legal and regulatory reforms, decentralization and economic functions, and empowerment of communities. The state, the private sector, and the NGOs, especially the community based organizations, should operate and coordinate with each other to make good governance possible. See, governance now not only occupies center state in the development discourse, but is also considered as the crucial element to be incorporated in development society strategy. It signifies a change in the meaning of government, referring to a new process of governing or a changed condition or ordered rule or the new method by which society is governed. It incorporates the minimal state as cybernetic system, self-organizing networks, corporate governance, and good governance. It basically focus on the process of governing involving interactions between various formal and informal institutions as well as influencing the policies and decisions that concern public lives. Key concepts. Autopsies. It refers to the organization's relationship with the environment, which is said to be internally generated, and change is also considered to broad up about internally corporate governance. It is the system by which business corporations are directed and controlled. The corporate governance structure specifies the distribution of rights and responsibilities among different participations in the corporations, such as the board, managers, shareholders, and other stakeholders, and spells out the rules and procedures for making decisions on corporate affairs. Following of the state. The phrase summarizes many of the changes which have taken and are taking place in the British government. It refers to the privatization of limiting the scope and forms of public intervention, the giving way of functions by central and local government departments to alternate delivery systems such as agencies, the devolving of functions by British government to European Union institutions, limiting the discretion of public servants to application of new public management principles, with its emphasis on a managerial accountability and clearer political control through sharper distinctions between politics and administration. New institutional economics. Its approach to the study of economic phenomena that focuses on institutions other than the market or norms, conventions, and patterns of social interactions to examine as to which institutional arrangement fosters growth, development, efficiency, and which hinder these. The new institutional economics differ from the old institutional economics in that it builds up analysis of institutions from individual tastes and preferences and choice of action. So next is governance, role of bureaucracy and political executive. See, governance, role of bureaucracy and political executive. Uh, Models of relationship between bureaucracy and the political executive. Relationship between bureaucracy and political executive in historical perspective. Relationship between bureaucracy and political executive in post-independence period. Changing complexion of relationship between bureaucracy and political executive. Next is, after studying this unit, you should be able to explain the role of bureaucracy and political executive in governance. Examine the relationship between bureaucracy and political executive in historical perspective. Highlight the relationship between bureaucracy and political executive in the post-independence period. Analyze the changing complexion of relationship between bureaucracy and political executives. See, governance refers to the forms of political systems and manners in which power is exercised in utilizing countries' economic and social resources for development. It also deals with the capacity of a government to design, formulate, and implement policies and discharge functions. It is equivalent to purposive and development-oriented administration, which is committed to improvement in quality of life of people. It implies a high level of organizational effectiveness. It also relates to the capacity of political administrative systems to cope up with the emerging challenges of the society. Governance involves adoption of new values of public service delivery in order to establish greater efficiency, legitimacy, and credibility of systems. In simple terms, governance can be considered as citizen friendly, citizen caring, and citizen responsive administration. Well, the essential prerequisites for quality governance are that the system should be such which suits the needs, aspirations, background, and ethos of the people concerns, and those selected for operating the system should be endowed with character and competence and motivated by the spirit of public service. Kashyap 2000. One of the most crucial areas of institutional governance in present time is the interaction between political executive and career civil servants. These interactions between become important for the government to perform its routine tasks and to make and implement the decisions required for a modern political systems. Besides, they are also important for the functioning of an effective political democracy. Against this background, it is important to discuss the role and relationship of bureaucracy and political executive. This unit we shall discuss the role of bureaucracy and political executive in the process of governance. An attempt is made to examine the changing complexion of the relationship between bureaucracy and political executive. Conclusion. So yeah, this to conclude, the political administrative relationship remains intrinsically important as well as fascinating. There is not only the question of the balance of capacities and influence between the two groups, but also of the nature of their influence upon each other. If there is to be satisfactory balance in democracies between politicians and administrators, continuous attention must be paid to the recruitment and training of the both groups. Also, it is a question of learning from experience and caring and sharing of responsibilities, and not conflicts and competition for powers. Globally, there are efforts towards good governance. India is not an exception. Good governance, for that matters, governance not only requires a cordial relationship between bureaucracy and political executive, but also good citizenry. Therefore, the need for of the hour is that more and more honest and dedicated individuals join politics and take active interest in the governance of the country. The same applies also to the bureaucracy. There must also be stricter public scrutiny over the functioning of ministers and higher officials to prevent abuse of power by them. Once the top layer of politicians and civil servants show good examples, the quality of the cutting edge level administration is sure to improve. The relationship between the bureaucracy and the political executive is of crucial importance for effective governance. As democracy matures and the two sides, politicians and civil servants, interacts between themselves more and more in actual work situations, one can safely conclude that, as in the other mature democracies in the West, the relationship between the political and the professional executives would steadily progress toward more and more understanding of this for the services of the people. Key concepts: bureaucratization of politics, the change in the complexion and functioning of politics, influenced by the impact of bureaucratization of the in the form of rigidity, adherence to rules and regulations, formal structures. This informal and flexible form of functioning of politics is said to become uh, formal and rigid. Politicization of bureaucracy, it is considered to be contrary or opposite to the concept of political neutrality. It implies public service and its functioning getting influenced and used for party purposes. The appointment, of promotion, and tenure of public servants is said to be influenced by party activities. Next is governance, role of legislature and the judiciary. Role of legislature in governance, role of judiciary in governance, judicial activism, nature and meaning, areas of judicial activism, public interest, litigation, and innovative step towards judicial activism and appraisal, relationship between the legislature and the judiciary, highlight the crucial role of the legislature and the judiciary in governance, appreciate also governance in terms of plurality of agencies and institutions working in tandem considered as a crucial element in public administration of a country. The principles of governance, whether enshrined in the ancient Indian treaties or spelled out in the directive principles of the state policy, veer around the pivotal theme of all-round welfares of the citizens. In India, during the freedom struggle, Swaraj and good governance were considered synonymous. After independence, India's constitution enshrined the aspirations of the people and the ideals of the freedom struggle. The founding fathers of the constitution resolved to keep people's right, equality, social justice, and all-round well-being as the core of the governance. In order to operationalize these issues, governance requires a moral determination that is central to the concerns of all human beings. And thus, the role of the legislature and judiciary becomes important in order to improve the quality of the governance. The legislature and the judiciary are two important organs of the state, which not only have key responsibility but have also to perform a major role in making justice accessible to all. The student shall familiarize you with the important aspects of role of legislature and judiciary, the process of governance, and the significance of the judicial activism. You shall be able to comprehend the nature of relationship between the legislature and the judiciary. To conclude, it can be said that the judiciary is an indispensable part of good governance in terms of maintenance of rule of law and upholding the social justice. An efficient and independent judiciary is the greatest guarantee of well-being of the society. At the same time, supremacy of the legislature is an established fact in the parliamentary democracy. Hence, the need of the hour is to strike a balance between the parliamentary supremacy and judicial independence. Both should function in a spirit of mutual respect and trust instead of in a mentality of superiority of one over the other. Governance requires a moral determination that is central to the concerns of all human beings. In such a scenario, the role of legislation and the judiciary becomes important in order to improve the quality of governance. In a democracy, judiciary as well as the legislature plays a very important role. The system of governance in India has witnessed phases of close contact between the legislature and the judiciary. The former steering by the principle of parliamentary sovereignty, while the latter seeking to assert the independence and the power of judicial review. Both should function in a spirit of mutual respect and trust as integral tools of the governance. Key concepts. Certiorari. It's a writ issued by a superior court for transferring the courts of proceedings of a case from an inferior court or quasi-judicial authority to superior court for determining the legality of the proceedings. Habeas corpus. It literally means to have the body of mandamus. It literally means command. This writ makes a person perform an act which is a part of public duty. The person is commanded to perform the act. Prohibition. It's a judicial writ. It's a judicial writ issued by us to an inferior court, preventing it from usurping jurisdiction, which got vested with it. While mandamus commands activity, prohibition commands inactivity, quo warranto, this literally means in what authority. When any person acts in a public office in which he is not entitled to act, the court, by the issue of this writ, will inquire into the legality of the claims of the persons to that office. Intergovernmental relations in the process of governance. Meaning and importance of intergovernmental relations. Hello.